Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name's FPL Phillips and today is another episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm, the series here where I take on the computer-generated algorithm team put together by the Fantasy Football Fix computer for every game week of the FPL season and seeing if I can outscore the computer on more weeks than it can beat me. So far I'm doing pretty well. The score is now 18-3 after last week with the algorithm picking up a victory. It had some pretty good assets, so its reputation definitely rebuilding itself. And all that said and done, let's get into having a look at the team for game week 34. Of course, a very popular free hit week, so this one's going to be really useful. Let's take a look at how the computer team is lining up. And so the updated score at the bottom, as you can see, 18-13, and now we've got the predicted points in of 106 for the algorithm this week. A very healthy looking predicted points total indeed. Let's see if it can live up to the hype. And the team that it's gone with to do so, it kicks off with Pickford between the sticks for the algorithm side. Nottingham Forest and Liverpool, two home fixtures. Obviously a difficult one on paper in that Liverpool game, but in recent years we have seen very tight Merseyside derbies. We have seen them finish with a few amounts of goals as well, and I'm not saying that can't happen in that game. So Pickford, I don't think is the worst captaincy shout this week. I'm not going to go with him personally. I think, you know, maybe Dean Henderson at Crystal Palace is a better option. The keeper that I've gone with as well, I think is probably a better pick. But he is probably inside that top three just about. And when you're looking to squeeze in all the outfielders you can from these other teams, then it does make quite a bit of sense to go with him in goal. In defence, we're going to see him doubled up, actually, with Mykolenko of Everton as well being in this side, alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold and then Gabriel of Arsenal. So some interesting selections from the algorithm. Gabriel is a pretty bog-standard, obvious asset to go for. He's got good underlying data. We know he can get an attacking return quite comfortably. And yeah, he is pretty much nailed on in that Arsenal side, unless something kind of freak occurs. And, you know, it has been rested once or twice. Whether it can happen in this double game week, potentially there's a slim chance, but I still think Gabriel is a very, very safe Arsenal defender to go for. Mykolenko, I'm not sure I would have the double up on the Everton back line, but I do like him as a pick. The underlying data, looking at him going forward, he does look very strong. He's had a number of good hauls already this season, so I think Mykolenko is a very, very nice pick. I just probably wouldn't have the two Everton defensive assets in one side. And then Trent Alexander-Arnold. A very interesting one. Obviously, he has had some minutes recently returning from injury. Connor Bradley is out. You imagine he starts at least one of these games in the double for Liverpool, and we've seen what Trent can do in just one game week in lots of previous occasions in FPL. Personally, think that Robertson and Van Dijk are just slightly better assets this week. I think Robertson, you've kind of got the assured minutes off that left-hand side, and he has also got a significant amount of attacking threat. And then Virgil van Dijk, obviously one of the most assured players for minutes in that Liverpool defence. He can always get a header as well from a set piece. And I just think with the assurity of those things in those two, probably give them the slight edge over Trent, who I think could get benched for one of those two games. But I could be wrong. And obviously, if you're looking to take a risk, the free hit is definitely the week to do that. In midfield, we're going to see Mohamed Salah take the captain's armband despite some poor form recently. Saka is the vice-captain alongside Odegaard as his teammate, and then Luis Diaz to complete the Liverpool triple up. And finally, Erzberet Eze as the fifth midfielder. So a very, very kind of template midfield for this week with some good performing assets over the course of the season, but players who maybe haven't been as in good form as of late. Salah and Diaz in particular subbed off early in the Europa League match. I think they just were playing pretty poorly, to be honest, and Liverpool have failed to score from open play for a significant number of minutes now. Whether they'll finally be able to get some redemption and, you know, make it up to the fans in these two games, I suppose we shall see. But Salah taking the captain's armband is a bit of a bittersweet decision this week. I think you have got, obviously, a good chance that Salah can get something from a penalty even, but I think it is just a bit of a pick at the moment where Salah's not in great form, and it does just feel like there's no one else really to go for, which is why I think he's taken the armband for a lot of teams this week. But we'll compare the captaincy at the end of this video, as always, and take a look at maybe some different, maybe more exciting options that we could be going for. Saka's kind of in a similar boat where he's not been in great form recently. His underlying numbers have dropped off in the last couple of game weeks. And so, yeah, again, Not one that I'm overly convinced by for this week, but he has probably got penalties. He has got a lot of potential in those games, just being in that Arsenal side, and so it is difficult to back against him. Odegaard is another one where, he's in that team, but he has been carrying a bit of a knock recently. He was subbed off early in one of the recent games as well. So not getting, the 90 minutes we see and tend to have come to terms with Odegaard getting every single game week. So that is, again, another thing to kind of consider. Luis Diaz, another one who has just not really been at the races recently, along with pretty much every other Liverpool attacker. There are a lot of options now with Darwin, Gakpo, Jota all fit as well. So there is some slight potential that he does get benched in one of those games. So I don't think Diaz is quite the safe pick that he would have been a couple of game weeks ago. But I still think that it's hard to back against him. And it is probably pretty advantageous to have two Liverpool attackers on paper, at least looking over the course of the season at these teams' data. Finally, Eze, who I think is the most exciting pick and I think is probably the best pick of this midfield, maybe I could argue. West Ham United and Newcastle, two pretty terrible defences in home fixtures for Crystal Palace. Newcastle are especially poor away from home, and West Ham have played a significant number of minutes in Europe this week. So you imagine that could be some great ground for Crystal Palace to get some points on the table. And Eze is going to be the spear front of that, as he is in that side, the kind of talisman when he's fit. And yeah, Eze is one who does tend to come into his own at the end of the season. He loves getting a lot of points and some big hauls, and I think Eze is just a really, really cool pick for this week, which is why, a lot of people are going for him. So he's not quite as much as a differential as maybe some of us would have been hoping, but for obvious reasons, he is still a very, very good shout. And then finally, up front, we've got Solanke and Mateta, the two probably strongest forward options for this week, I would definitely argue. Solanke, again, coming up against a defence in Aston Villa who have played a significant number of minutes only a few days ago. And then Wolves is not too bad of a fixture either, so Bournemouth could definitely have some goals in it for that one. And when Bournemouth are scoring goals, we know Solanke has a very high chance of being involved in one at least, if not, all of them. And then Mateta, who, again, we've already mentioned with Eze, has fantastic fixtures for Crystal Palace. Going to be on penalties as well. We don't know who's going to be on penalties, actually. I would argue Eze or Elise it will be between, but Eze would be my money and where that's at. But Mateta is still a very good shout, in my view, for those two fixtures. And yeah, he's been in some decent form recently and has been picking up some attacking returns. And then finally, on the bench, we've got Mitchell, Watkins and Kilman as outfielders. Bit surprised to see Watkins down there on the bench, but Bournemouth at home, I suppose if you're looking for a single game week player, you still have Watkins hanging around and you're not on free hit 34, then definitely go ahead and start him. Maybe don't be put off if you were considering transferring him out for a double game weeker. The algorithm is backing him as a single game week option to do quite well this week. But yeah, that rounds off the team, and let's have a look at my side and how it compares. And I've gone with a 3-4-3 formation, and I've kind of gone a bit bold and a bit risky. I've gone with a triple Arsenal defence. I've gone with Raya, White and Gabriel alongside Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I know I mentioned that Robbo and Van Dijk are probably the safest picks, but I've just got this bit of a gut feeling that Trent can do some damage in that one game that I think he'll start. And there is still the chance he starts too, and I knew I'd feel rubbish if I didn't go with Trent. I went with Robbo or Van Dijk, and they all started 2 games. So that's why I've gone with Trent, just a bit of a gut feeling and a hunch. Maybe I'm blinded by nostalgia of the past and stuff like that, but I do feel good with Trent in my team over those two. We then got Raya, White and Gabriel as mentioned. White, I think, would be a lovely differential this week. I'd maybe consider picking him over Gabriel if it was just the one of the Arsenal defensive assets I was going to be going for. I do like him as a pick, and we have seen him at points this season, especially early on in the campaign, getting forward and getting involved in a lot. Hopefully he can pick up one of those attacking returns this week. And then I've kind of gone with a differential strategy and gone with a triple up on the Crystal Palace. So I've still got Eze and Mateta in, but I've also gone with Elise, who I think is a fantastic FPL option to own at any time he is fit. And that is kind of the key with Elise, is the only real issue I have with him will be the risk of him maybe doing something, getting an injury, aggravating an injury that he's already had and kind of missing out on the second game of the double. and I think that is a bit of a risk with Elise, but if he's fit and starts both games, I think Palace could do some serious damage, get some good goals, and I'm looking to capitalise on that with all three of them. So a very differential strategy, and it's involved dropping both Arsenal midfielders that the algorithm team had and going against them. I was even considering Kai Havertz, who I think is a really good option for this game week as well, but in the end decided to go a bit brave and a bit bold with this strategy, which involved bringing in Cunha up front as well, who I think is a nice option. Obviously a tough game against Arsenal in the double game week, but he's been in good form, penalties as well, so I'm like the look of him. And I was kind of picking between still trying to select two of these front three, and then I just thought, why not have them all in, go a bit differential and go with this. So yeah, I'm predicting 99 points for this game week. I've got Decore, Aït-Nouri and Mikalenko on the bench if they are required. But yeah, finally, let's have a quick look at the captaincy for this week, because I've gone with Salah as well, but there is a slight urge to go Eze. Let's have a look at the underlying data. And Mo Salah does just seem like a boring pick. We'll have a look at the data from the last 6 game weeks in a second, but the predicted points do go in favour of him quite significantly. 11.5 and Saka on 11.4, so they're very tight between the two of them, the assets who have been the best options really over the course of the season. Havertz is on 8.6 and Eze all the way down on 7.8, so it doesn't look great from where the algorithm stands in terms of going for a differential captaincy pick. The expected goals conceded of the defences, Liverpool seem to have the best fixtures on paper, Fulham and Everton being the two weakest defences, but the West Ham data doesn't look great either, 2.03, so the first fixture of that Crystal Palace 2 does seem to be the best, which, you know, if Elise is only going to start one game and ends up being the first, I suppose plays a little bit more into my hands. 1.15 for Newcastle, but to be honest, watching them, I don't think it would seem that strong, and away from home, the data is definitely worse as well. Expected goals of teams go in favour of Liverpool, unsurprisingly. Arsenal on 1.75 and then Palace down on 1.37. And then the individual data does go in favour of the Egyptian King quite a lot, even over the last 6 game weeks, where some would argue he's been quite a bit poorer. So yeah, everything does just point, unfortunately, from a stats point of view, for going towards Salah. But maybe you guys can make a better argument for going Eze, or someone else convince me to do it in my own personal team, because I'm looking kind of for any excuse at the moment to try and make things a bit more exciting for myself. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this video somewhat useful. Make sure to leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Thank you very much for tuning in once again. And check out fantasyfootballfix.com for all the tools used in this video down below via the links in the description. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys, once again. And I'll see you, hopefully, in the next one. Goodbye.